All right, everyone, here it is, the final ed puzzle of the semester. Let's go. Now, first of all, just remember that what we're really trying to do is we're trying to compare the Korach story with the golden calf story, right? Two very, very low moments in Jewish history within the Torah itself. And we're asking the question, why is it that the Korach story gets the name Machloket She'eno L'Shem Shamayim? And why doesn't the golden calf story? So one of our goals is to try to fill out this golden calf side as we go through. So I'll be asking you that periodically to ask what is it that might make this also a machloket she'eno l'shem shemayim, maybe even worse than the Korach story, or is it? Dun, 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 dun. All right, so here we go. So we've had this part of the story already. Moses and the people saw Moses had delayed Boshesh in delaying from the mountain, and the people gathered upon Aaron and said to him, get up, make us a god that we will go before us, because this Moshe, the man who brought us out of Egypt, in the land of Egypt, we have no idea what has happened to him. And Aaron said to them, take off the gold earring leader in your ears, and your woman, and your children, and other people, and brought them to Aaron. Okay, so now let's look for a second at the golden calf side. From what we just read, is there anything here that tells us this has components of being a machloket she'eno l'shem shemayim? All right, next. And Aaron took them from their hands, and he formed it with a carving tool, and he made it into a fused calf. And they said, this is your God, O Israel, who brought us from you up from the land of Egypt. And Aaron saw, or maybe an Aaron was afraid, and he built an altar, an altar before it. Aaron called out and said, tomorrow will be a holiday for God. And they woke up early the next day, and they offered sacrifices, and the people sat down to eat and drink, and they arose up to play. And we saw l'sachek might mean they rose up to do idol worship. They rose up to kind of engage in some kind of sexual immoral behavior, or they rose up to kill each other. And God said to Moses, go, descend, because the people that you brought up from the land of Egypt are acting in a pretty horrible way. Is there anything within what we just read here that is a example or a sign of this being a machloket she'eno l'shem shemayim? If so, write that down. This is God talking, they've quickly strayed from the path that I have commanded them to do. They have made a melted calf, and they have bowed down to it, and they have made sacrifices to it. And they have said, this is your God, O Israelites, that has brought you up from the land of Egypt. And God said to Moses, I see that this people is stiff-necked. Now, let me be, and I will be angry at them, and I will destroy them, and I will make you into a great nation. So, is there anything here that makes us believe that this is a machloket she'eno l'shem shemayim? If so, write it down at this spot. I want to focus for a moment on these words that we actually passed over in class, because we actually got to the next slide. But this is a really important words right here. And God said to Moses, I see that this people is stiff-necked. Now let me be, and I will be angry at them. What questions do you have about that highlighted words? Why is it, this is God talking to Moshe. What does it mean? What is this saying? What kind of problems do you have with this verse? It's a little hard, so you got to think deeply about this. Now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to get some help by going to Sefaria, click on Tanakh, click on Exodus, click on chapter 32, verse 10, go to commentators, go to this guy named Ibn Ezra, who was a commentator who lived, close to around the time of the Ramban and Rashi. But really, in order to understand the entire what he's saying, you have to open up the both footnotes. There are two footnotes that you have to just click, and it'll give you a little bit more writing, and then read the entire Ibn Ezra with the footnotes. And then for me, please summarize what Ibn Ezra is saying. Write it in your own words. What is he saying that these words, let me be, are all about? How does it apply to Moshe? All right. Now what I'd like you to do is go to Rashi, but don't read Rashi. Rashi is a little confusing, although he's saying something very similar to Ibn Ezra. But Rashi actually brings Brachot 32a, and I want you to, and you'll see it's in bold. I want you to click on that. And then scroll down to the words between their numbers on the left-hand side of this Talmud sheet. That happens, it feels like a lot, but if you scroll down between 14 and 15, and you're going to get to the words, and once God said to me, he said to Moshe, leave me alone. So, and read from there until you get to the number 17, and pardon them. So read that full thing, and just to make sure you are reading. Tell me the characters that are in the parable. Tell me the characters that are in the parable. All right. Now here is what you probably found when you clicked on everything you needed to click on. And now we're going to go through it right now. And once God said to Moses, leave me be, that I may not destroy them. God said to Moses himself, if God is telling me God is telling me to let him be, to let God be, it must be because this matter is dependent upon me. Immediately Moshe stood up and was strengthened in prayer and asked that God have mercy on the nation of Israel and forgive them from their transgression. The Gemara is another word for Talmud. The Talmud then says, this is comparable to a king who became angry at his son who had sinned against him and beat him, administering a severe blow. At that moment, a well-wisher of the king was sitting before him and witnessing the entire event, and was afraid to say anything to the king about this excessive beating. Meanwhile, the king said to his son, were it not for this well-wisher of mine who is sitting before me, I would have killed you. Upon hearing this, the king's friend said to himself, this is clearly a sign that this matter, rescuing the son from the hands of his fathers, depended upon me. Immediately he stood up and rescued him from the king. So what I'd like you to do is, I would like you to create the comic, but not on the parable side. I've actually already did that. You can see I have a king here, I have his son, and I have a well-wisher. The king is saying, thanks for visiting, well-wisher. It's a good thing you're here, because if you weren't, my anger would have gotten out of control. And here he's kind of kicking his kid. Ow, Dad, stop kicking me. You're hurting me. Then the well-wisher thinks to himself, OMG, did you hear what the king said? What the king was saying? He's saying that I am helpful in controlling his anger against this boy. I didn't realize that I have this power, but now that I do, I'm going to use it even more. And so here's the well-wisher using his power. Hey, king, why don't you take a few deep breaths? Walk away for a moment. Count to 10. You don't really want to hurt your kid, do you? Great point, Mr. Well-wisher. So now what I'd like you to do is, that is the parable, meaning that is the Talmud is saying, here's the example, and now we're going to apply it to the story of God and Moshe. So I want you to create 1, 2, 3, the comic of God and Moses. And for God, you can just have a voice bubble without writing anything, because we don't really know what God looks like. But here's the parable here, and then here is the so here's the parable, sorry. And then we're trying to kind of learn from that, kind of what happens above, right? So because here's the piece that you're going to make into a comic right up here. All right, good luck with that. And now I'd also like to go to the final piece of this piece of Talmud. Abahu said, were the verse not written in this manner, it would be impossible to utter. Meaning, if this verse wasn't written like this, that God says, now let me be, and I will be angry at them, that we would never be able to utter such a statement. Why is that? What is Abahu, what does he think is so crazy about this statement? That God is saying, now let me be, and I will be angry at them. what is so outlandish about what he's saying? So now back to what Abahu actually says. Abahu says, were the verse not written in this matter, it would be impossible to utter it in deference to God. The phrase "leave me be" teaches us that Moshe grabbed the Holy One, blessed be He, meaning God, as a person who grabs his friend by the garment and would by his garment would. And he said before him, Master of the universe, I will not leave you be until you forgive the people. And what do we see happening at the end of this piece is we didn't get to it yet, but let's see what happens at the end. Um, the end is, and God changed God's mind about the punishment planned for the people. But here we see actually what it is that Moshe is now going to do, right? Because so God says, "Now let me be, and I will be angry at them, and I will destroy them, and I will make you into a great nation." So basically, Moses is hearing from these words a hint. What is that hint again? So we just saw that the Gemara brings that, the Talmud brings that up. What's the hint? What is the hint? The hint is that it's Moshe's job to try to calm God down. And Moshe does it in three ways. There are three strategies that Moshe uses in order to calm God down. We looked at two of them, which are in this pasuk here, and then we looked at what we're going to look at one more right here. So please first list all three of them. And number three is, remember your servant Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, how you swore to them by yourself and said to them, I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars in heaven. I will give your offspring this whole land of which I spoke to possess forever. So there's one strategy here. There's two strategies here of how Moses kind of goes about in getting God to change God's mind. And we see at the end, and God does change God's mind about the punishment planned for the people. All right. So, have we learned anything more about how the golden calf incident is an incident of machloket she'eno l'shem shamayim? If so, write it at this point. I'm purposely leaving this all blank because I want to go over it in class if we found anything. Okay. Now we're up to the next part of the story. So Moses turned and went down from the mountain with the two tablets written on both surfaces. They were inscribed on the one side and on the other. The tablets were God's work, and the writing was God's writing, carved upon the tablets. Now, if we go right now for a second and we look at tablets that are, let's try to escape here for a second. If we go on Google and we go to some tablets, let's go to some tablets, 10 Commandments. And let's just look at some images, and we're going to see some images here. Here's a nice one. Here's another one. Here's 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 one. All right. So, however, now let's go back to what we just read, and what I'd like you to do for your second piece of artwork for this week. Right, the first was the comic that you're sending to me, and here's the second piece of artwork that you're sending on to me, and it is to draw according to actually what is said here. Draw what these tablets probably look like. All right, next one. When Joshua heard the sound of the people and its evilness, he said to Moses, "There is a cry of war in the camp." But Moses answered, "It is not the sound of the tune of triumph. Is it? It is, or the sound of the tune of defeat. It is the sound of song that I hear." And it came to pass, when Moses approached the camp, and he saw the calf and the dancing, he became so angry. And he sent out from his hands the tablet, and he broke them at the bottom of the mountain. Then he took the calf and that they made, and he burned it in fire, and he ground it until it was thin, and he sprinkled it on the face of the water, and he made the Israelites drink it. Okay, we got some questions here. So, according to sentence 1 and 2, what did the ten? Oh, wait, we did that. Okay, number 2. What is Joshua's fear, and how does Moshe contradict it? Number 3. What does Moshe change? What makes Moshe change from the kind of his idea of, oh, don't worry about Joshua, this is not so bad what we're hearing, to I'm so angry and I'm throwing down the tablets. By the way, question number 3.5 is, um, there's always a question among the rabbis of, did Moshe throw down the tablets, or did Moses drop the tablets because they became so heavy? And there's one famous midrash, famous story that says, actually, when Moses saw the dancing and he saw that the words of the Ten Commandments he was holding basically said, "You shall not create an image of God and dance around in some way," that all the letters flew up from the Torah, and now all they were two pieces of stone that Moses was holding, and so he couldn't hold them anymore, and they fell. But from what we're reading here, is Moses throwing down the tablets in anger, or are they falling down because Moses is kind of in despair? Which one do you think is the answer? And then our last question: what's all this drinking about? What's all this drinking of the golden calf sprinkles, or something like that? So what I'd like you to do is, there is one other place in the Torah that speaks about someone drinking something. I'm not talking about Jacob, Esav eating the stew, drinking the stew, but there is one other drinking kind of scene, and it requires you to go to Sefaria, Tanakh, Numbers, click on number 5, verse 11, go up and read from verse 11 up to verse 31, and tell me the verse that speaks about the drinking in particular. What verse number is that? Who is drinking it? So verse number, who is drinking it, and why they are drinking it. And then my other question is there a connection between that drinking and this drinking? Okay, or you can't say no. I want you to try to find a connection between that drinking and this drinking. All right, and anything in this part of the Torah that tells us that here we have a machloket she'eno l'shem shamayim. Okay, did you figure out something there? All right. If so, put it in your chart. And next part, we're almost done here. Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you that you have brought such a great sin upon them?" And Aaron said, "Don't be so angry. You know that this guy, this people is for evil. They said to me, 'Make for us a god that can walk before us,' because that guy Moses, the one who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him. So I said to them," this is Aaron talking, "so I said to them, 'Whoever has gold, take it off.' They gave it to me, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf." And Moses saw that the people were out of control, since Aaron had let them get out of control. Moses stood up at the gate of the camp and said, "If you are for God, come with me." All the men of Levi gathered with Moses. He said to them, "Oh, Levi, that's where Korach's from." All the men of Levi gathered with Moses. He said to them, "This is what God, the God of Israel, says. Each of you put a sword on your thigh and go back and forth from gate to gate throughout the camp and kill siblings, neighbors, and relatives." Oops, you probably didn't learn about this in lower school. The Levite men did what Moses said, and 3,000 of the people fell that day. We got some questions here. Number 1, what are Aaron's excuses? Number 2, where's Aaron strayed from the truth in his explanation? So Aaron says, "Don't be angry. You know that this people is for evil. They said to me, 'Make for us a god that we can walk before us,' because this guy Moses, the one who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him. So I said to them, 'Whoever has gold, take it off.' They gave it to me, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf." Let's go look for a second so you can answer this question. We're going to go all the way back. Oh boy. All the way back. All the way back. Uh-huh. Um, so they said, and Aaron said, "Take off the gold earrings that are in your ears of your women and your sons and your daughters and bring them to me." And all the people took off the gold that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. Aaron took them from their hands, and he formed it with a carving tool, and he made it into a fused calf. They said, They said, "This is your God, O Israelites, who brought you up from the land of Egypt." So now we go back, woo, all the way back. And what did Aaron says, "Don't be angry." They said to me, "Make for us a god." And I said to them, "Whoever has gold, take it off." They gave it to me, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. Wait a second. Aaron is not saying exactly what he said back then. Why? Moses saw that people were out of control. Okay. What is the percentage of the 600,000 people who actually rebelled in the end? By the way, do you remember how many rebellers there were in the story of Korach? 250, right? What's the percentage of rebellers of this 600,000? Okay, next. Okay, did we learn anything from this part of the story that feels machloket she'eno l'shem shamayim ish? Okay, let's move on. The next day Moses said to the people, "You've been guilty of a great sin, and now I will go up to God. Perhaps I can get forgiveness for your sins." And Moses returned to God and to him, "Please, this people sinned a great sin. They made for themselves a god of gold. Now, if you will forgive their sin, good. But if not, then erase me, please, from the book that you have written." Oh my goodness, that's crazy what Moses is saying here. And God said to Moses, "I will erase from my record only the one who has sinned, or the ones who have sinned against me. Go now, lead the people where I told you." Then God sent a plague upon the people for what they did with the calf that Aaron made. Okay, a few questions to end our session today. Number one, wait a second. Didn't Moses already get forgiveness from God? Why must he go up and do it again? If we look back over here, right before Moses comes down, right, um, right? Moses tried to calm down God down, and God changed God's mind about the punishment plan for the people. It feels like we're done. Then we have this. Then Moses goes down. Moses is the one that gets completely angry here, and now for some reason Moses says, "Now I've got to go back up and and get forgiveness." But didn't he already do that? What's this whole getting forgiveness again? Okay. And here, what is Moses' strategy here? Right before he used a couple strategies, right? Strategy number one, you put a lot of resources into getting these people out of Egypt. That has to be significant. Number two, your logic of bringing people out of Egypt and killing them here is going to make you a laughing stock. And number three, you made some promises that need to be fulfilled, God. You need to be a fulfiller of promises. Those were the three reasons before. Now Moses doesn't use any of those reasons, but in order to forgive the people, Moses basically says, what this time? Okay. And what is God's response? And how is it different than what God was or was not able to do at the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, if you can remember that? I find this very, very interesting. We see something that God is able to do right now, which we didn't quite see at the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. And then the ending of the story is, why is there this great plague? I thought actually we already found out that all of the people who dealt with the plague, the 3,000, they have already died. So who's getting this plague and why? All right, that's it. So anything about this part of the story that feels machloket lo shelo l'shem shamayim ish? All right, and we're done. Best of luck, everyone.